Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you made it through the weekend. It's beginning of a new week. Glad you've joined us. It's Monday, September the 20th, and we're going to be looking at the rest of Joshua, but we're going to do it in a whole package today. Uh, and there's a good reason for that. First of all, before we get into it, let me ask you to pray for Barbara. Today she's having cataract surgery on her left eye, and she's going to come out singing "I See Trees of Green" and "Red Roses" too, because she'll be able to see again. But pray for her and that recovery, if you will. That'll be right after lunch or here today on Monday. But again, glad you joined us this morning. And when we first started talking about Joshua, he was a young man, robust, somebody who followed in the footsteps of Moses, and the Lord chose him. Later on, the Lord said, "Hey, Joshua, you're an old man." I hate it when people recognize how old I am. But whether you're 18 or 83, it is true that your choices define you. You are what you choose to be. And what we're going to look at this week is the way Joshua approached the leadership, the elders, and then all the tribes of Israel, and telling them that they now had a choice to make. They've received their inheritance. He spent literally from chapter 13, where we were, until about chapter 23, dispersing or dividing the lands that Israel had been given by God. And they were given, they were an inheritance, but then they'd go in and fight and possess them. But God made them winners. And the thing that I think we need to realize is that as we possess our possessions, it's going to be tough. It's going to take a while. So there's a lot of chapters here that talk about dividing of the land between this tribe, that tribe, and the other tribe, and all. And so the book of Joshua is not only a book of spiritual guidance and points, but it turns out it's a history book. It turns out that it's a geography book, and in some cases geology, because it goes and talks about the areas where they have been given and what they're like and so forth and so on. But then we come to chapter 23, and in Joshua chapter 23, Joshua gets reminded. We've already talked about he learned it's not over till it's over. When the Lord said, "Joshua, you're an old man, and yet there are still lands to be conquered, lands to be taken." And you think that would be all, but the Lord just keeps reminding Joshua that he's an old man. Now, I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more times God reminds me that I'm old. And I just hope that I will be able to, as long as God allows me to be here before I go to be with him, at least to do something, to choose to do something. And that's what he talks about here. In Joshua 23, let me read the first part of Joshua 23 to you, just a verse or two. It says, after a long time had passed, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them. Isn't it good to be in that place where you can just rest? And in the midst of that time of resting, Joshua is an old man. And the Lord says to him, "Joshua, you're still not through. Get all the leaders together. Get those guys who went with you through all of this, those guys who are resting and at peace." And it says, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them. Joshua, by then a very old man, now he was old and now he's very old, summoned all of Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, and officials, and said to them, here's a great realization, folks, I am very old. Wow. He says, you yourselves have seen everything the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I have allotted as an inheritance for your tribes all the land of the nations that remain, the nations that were conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land as the Lord your God promised you. Be very strong. So what he was saying here is, folks, it's not over yet. I'm an old man. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but it's not over yet. So be wise in your decisions. Joshua reminds the people that no matter how old he is, they still have things to do. And they still have to make choices. And Joshua still had to make choices. And you never get so old, folks, that your choices don't define you. So in chapter 24 and verse 1, what he does is he reminds the people of what God has done for them. He's assembled all the elders, and now in chapter 24 it says he assembles all the tribes, the whole group. He says he assembles the tribes of Israel at Shechem, and he summoned the elders, leaders, judges, officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said to all the people, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. And then he says, long ago, and what he does then is a history lesson. Long ago, and he tells them about the calling of Abraham, the leading of Abraham, the covenant with Abraham. And he says, folks, you're going to have to make a choice now. He reminds them of what God has done. And then he says, you're going to have to make a choice. Now, folks, as we begin this week, I want you to remember, every day you live, whether you're a young person or an old person, you are going to have to make choices every day of your life. And those choices are going to reveal who you are in some cases. They're going to define who you are in some cases, but they will always affect you. You are the result of the choices you make. And Joshua is about to remind those people that they should always review what God has done before they make a choice that will affect not only themselves, but those around them. Not only for the day they make the choice, but for days and years to come. So let's think about that this week and today, that we are the result of our choices, and we need to review and remind ourselves of what God has done in the past before we make those choices that will affect our future. Well, God bless you, and we'll see you as we continue this line of thought in the morning. You guys have a great evening, day to day as you start the week, and we'll see you in the morning.